Hello, hello. Welcome back. You know what? Today is a great day because we are welcoming our very first guest. I promise you, we're only going to take guests, right? And what is that we're going to talk about? Well, I wanted us to start with investment. So important. Investment into a large market. And my guest today, Mr. Michael Friedman, is somebody very interesting with his career started in the US, with stint in a couple of other countries, in China as well. But I'm not going to tell you much more than that because you know what? You're going to find out for yourself. So stay tuned and listen to Michael. Welcome to Renewables in Action. Hello, you dreamt about it? We making it happen. You wanted to simplify, demystify the renewable energy sector? We are doing it for you. Connect and tune in to Renewables in Action podcast, your unique podcast. The podcast that gives you all the information you want to know about renewable energy across the world. Okay. Good morning, Michael. It's very exciting to see you here today. First of all, thank you for making the time. I know you're extremely busy entrepreneur, investors. I think talking to you is really much a pleasure. So how are you today?
Tony, great to be here. Thank you. I'm fine. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. I know there is a big, time difference between us. So, for me, it's still the morning, but for you, I know it's a bit late, isn't it?
Not yet. It's 3 p.m. So
Oh,
just
okay,
afternoon.
3 p.m. That's okay. That's still a lot of time that you can, a lot of things
Right.
that you can do.
So
Excellent.
just to fill people in, I'm calling in from Shanghai.
Yeah, exactly, from Shanghai. And we're definitely going to talk about that because I think I looked at your career and it's very, very filled. And I think I'm impressed by that. But I wanted to start, first of all, can you tell me a little bit more? Because obviously, I know a little bit about you, but people listening to us will not have that pleasure. And that's why they want to find out now. So who is Michael Friedman?
Okay. Grew up in New York City. Went to college in the U.S. Went to work for Oracle, which is, well, most people know, big software company.
Oh, yeah.
Started, right. Started looking for more interesting things to do within Oracle and got myself into a position working with Latin America, helping them on advanced technology consulting. Back then, World Wide Web was very advanced. Nobody knew how to do it. Oracle Hong Kong needed help on a project they were selling to Hong Kong Telecom, which is now PCCW, but back then it was Hong Kong Telecom. This was before Hong Kong went back to China. And I got asked to go out to Hong Kong. Oracle back then was a rather, you could say, dynamic company. They said if you didn't like your organization, wait a quarter. And while I was out in Hong Kong, I lost my job. My boss called me and said, we don't have a position for you anymore. So I went to take a look at where I could go. Oracle Latin America was willing to take me, but they wanted to put me in Miami. I said, I want to be in region. They said, hey, Miami, it's in region. It counts. Back then, all the flights between countries in Latin America, they changed in Miami. So it made more sense to put me in Miami, but I didn't want to be there. I wanted to actually get the international experience. And Oracle Hong Kong made me an offer. Went to work in Hong Kong. You're in Hong Kong. You're sitting next to China. You feel inadequate if you don't try China. So I went to work for a startup in China, went to work for another startup in China, started my own company, did various other things, moved into finance, got an EMBA, and then started this business, which I'm doing now, Reflect Ventures, where we're investing in emerging markets.
Excellent. I think you have a very, very busy career. So did you plan all of
Yeah,
it? Or was it just
God, no.
exploiting opportunities?
Well, you exploit opportunities and you make opportunities. You have to have a general idea of where you want to be, but you also have to realize that when an opportunity comes, you have to take it, assuming that it's going more or less in the direction you want to go, or perhaps in a different direction, but one that's useful.
Okay. And if you were to talk about one quality that was really useful for you to take this journey that was yours, what would it be?
Risk tolerance, high risk tolerance.
Maybe that's why you're an investor.
Yeah.
High risk tolerance.
Especially nowadays.
Yeah, especially nowadays. That's a good thing to say that. Okay, that's absolutely perfect. That's great. And I know you talked about the career that you had. You worked for Oracle, so obviously you obviously been looking at emerging markets. That's a big thing for you. Because I noticed that you have you worked in Latin America or you just been connected to Latin America?
So I never lived in Latin America, but I was going down there working on various projects with Oracle, Latin America subsidiaries in Mexico, in Argentina. Mexico was fun. I actually did that before I was officially working for Latin America. I took some vacation days, flew down to Mexico, and worked off the books for Oracle Mexico doing a training class. They didn't want to pay the price that Oracle officially was going to charge them. It was actually cheaper for them to pay me cash. Yeah.
That-
Like I said, risk tolerance. I think I could have been fired for that, but nobody found out.
But you didn't mind doing it.
Yeah, well, I'm not even sure Oracle had ever thought of having a rule against freelancing for other Oracle subsidiaries, but I did it. Yeah. In fact, all of the Oracle Mexico people were joking about me being a reverse wetback because I was working illegally in Mexico.
That was a
They're
different
like,
kind of
it's,
story.
you got confused, Mike. It's supposed to be Mexicans going to the US and working illegally. What are you doing?
That was definitely the other way around.
Yeah.
That's actually quite interesting. And then and I noticed as well that you travel definitely to China or at least to Asia, and you've been in Asia for some time. How is it like living in Asia?
I mean, that's a bit of a hard question to answer. It's a bit like asking, a fish, what is water like? No, but I mean, you become very used to it. I would say, and also Asia, of course, is very diverse. There's a huge difference between China and Thailand, for example, or even between Shanghai and Shenzhen.
Mm,
And China itself has changed tremendously back in the last 20 years that I've been here. My first company in China, I had a company in Hong Kong. I had no registered company in China. I had people working off the books in a couple of apartments doing programming, and I would smuggle cash across the border from Hong Kong into China to pay them. Right? That's the way China used to work. We
I
used to
think,
joke China's a country where everything is forbidden and anything is possible. Today, you couldn't get away with that for 5 minutes. You'd be in jail so fast you wouldn't know what hit you.
wow.
So China has transformed.
Mm, mm. I can definitely see that there's a theme in your life there with borders, right? So Mexico, US, China,
Well,
Hong Kong.
going across borders. I mean, there was leverage. There was an arbitrage to be done between Hong Kong and China because back then China was very poor, Hong Kong was very rich, and they were right next door to each other.
Mm,
That
okay,
has changed. Now
absolutely.
it's rich Hong Kong. Now it's rich Chinese people going to Hong Kong and annoying the Hong Kong people by buying everything.
Mm, okay, that shows that things are moving in life, right? Nothing is actually stable.
Oh no.
Continuous moving. So excellent. Thanks for that. I think I want to because you talking about China and that give me the opportunity to talk about your current companies, Reflect Ventures.
Mhm.
So that's what it's all about. So can you tell us a little bit where and when did you get the idea to go into this business, and what are you really looking to achieve with this?
Well, I got the idea to go into this business probably 7 or 8 years ago and started building the connections, the assets, and what I needed to do in order to do that. That was part of the motivation for getting my EMBA, my executive MBA, which I did. I finished that in 2014. So, like I said, you think about the direction you want to go and you start building up what it takes to get there, and then you grab any opportunity. In this case, the opportunity came in, I guess now it's 2021, very beginning of 2021, end of 2020. There was a company that I and a bunch of other people were very interested in investing in. They wanted a certain minimum amount to invest. They weren't willing to negotiate. It was too much for us to invest in as individuals. They said, why don't you put together a syndicate? So we looked, we figured out how to do it. And then I, together with the other people who did it with me, we just said, okay, great, we're going to keep doing it. And then bang, you've got a venture capital firm, right? Or I should say a syndication firm.
Mm,
You're running syndicates.
mm,
Now, when you do that, you need to look very carefully at what are you doing. There are probably about 1,000 syndicators working full time, maybe more, each of them saying, I will invest in good deals at a good price and you should give me your money because I'm the smartest guy in the room, or I have the best connections. That's a very crowded market. So I talked with my colleagues, my partners, and we sat down and we thought, what do we know that other people do not know? And we all had very strong emerging markets experience. We had all been in China as China went from, very, very poor, as poor as, I mean, really poor. When I first came to China, meat was basically, you ordered a meat dish in a restaurant, and the meat was a flavoring, basically, a little bit of meat added to a vegetable dish. And China now is more or less middle income. Certainly the big cities are middle income, as the country goes. So we'd seen that whole growth. We'd seen how China went mobile first. We'd seen the models that worked in China. We'd seen the growth of Tencent, of Alibaba, et cetera, been involved in some of it. And we said, you know what, this is happening in other places too. And we can see how it's happening. We can see how people in Nigeria, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, they will buy a mobile phone, a smartphone, as an investment because it's a tool for making more money. They won't buy it to play Angry Birds, but they'll buy it to make more money for their families. And they're working hard, and people are building the companies that are giving them these opportunities. They're giving them the tools to make more money with their mobile phone. I mean, you can see, it may be hard to see this the first time around, but the second time around, it's blindingly obvious. And so we decided we wanted to invest in that. And that's what we've been doing for the past 2 years.
That's excellent. I think that's really great there. So you're talking about when obviously you get an idea to bring people together, start acting up on it, and now obviously you've been doing that. And how's it been going for the last 3 years?
Pretty well. We've been investing in Latin America, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Africa, Latin America. We haven't yet done an India deal, but we're open to it. We've been investing in logistics, supply chain, distribution, transport, and related fintech. All of these things, if you think about it, they are the lifeblood of economies. You cannot shut them down. You have an economic problem, your currency devalues, you default on your debt to the rest of the world. It doesn't matter. The trucks keep rolling. The stores have to still have food in them. If that stops, your entire country breaks down. People are rioting in the streets demanding food, which can happen, but it usually doesn't. And it means that these are the safest investments out there. We don't go and touch, say, an online beauty brand. When people are hungry, well, yeah, I mean, if your kids are hungry, you tell your wife, I'm sorry, dear, you can't buy lipstick. But you still need to buy rice, and that rice still needs to get trucked to the store, and you still need to buy potatoes, and there still needs to be a distribution chain from the farm to the store where you buy your potatoes. If your kids get sick, you will scrape up the money to buy some medicine, and there needs to be a distribution channel from the pharma importer to the pharmacy to you. All of these things, they keep going no matter how bad the economy gets. And that means that the companies we've invested in are resilient. This is a tough time right now in a lot of countries. But the companies that we've invested in, they're doing, most of them are doing reasonably well because people need them. They will take their last dollar and spend it on food. And the companies we invested in are the ones that are getting food to the consumer.
And I've actually noticed that you started your business pretty much at the start of the pandemic, which is actually quite interesting.
One year in.
1 year in, yeah, exactly. Yeah, 1 year in. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Well, that made it easier.
That's
which
interesting.
Is not something most people can say.
Tell me why.
Okay. 5 years ago, if I wanted to invest other people's money into a company in Nigeria, I had to fly there. And I had to go and look at the company. Now, on syndicator economics, that is difficult or impossible. But when the pandemic started, all of a sudden, everybody switched. Everybody said, do a Zoom call. Raising money from people, the same thing. You want to get, $100,000, $500,000 from someone. 5 years ago, you were expected to go to them, meet them in person, and show them that respect. Once the pandemic started, people said, okay, we'll do a Zoom call. And even today, people are, everyone realized that it's really crazy to spend 24 hours in planes, a day on the ground for a 2-hour meeting. So a lot of businesses moved to online and is staying online. You still do need to meet people and stuff, but not as much as you used to.
Okay, okay. And was it the main factor that allow you to be able to take the company off and to be to be able to grow the way you've been growing for the last 3 years? Are there anything else? Because obviously, most of the time, people when we look at the pandemic, obviously it was very, very terrible situation, right? Moment for pretty much everybody, right? But as we know, when there was a crisis, and I think you're in the right country for that. Usually, we always tend to refer to that say in China that say crisis and opportunity is the same word, and which is clearly what you actually been doing. I was actually wondering if there is anything else apart from the fact that we move virtual, right? The world moved to
Okay, so a lot of the models that we work with all of a sudden became even more essential. If you want people to stay home, you need delivery riders to bring food to their door. We invest in the companies that are, for example, financing the motorbikes and smartphones that the delivery rider needs, because he may not have the money to buy those up front. A lot of the business models we invested in became more important and more essential because of the pandemic, and that accelerated growth. A lot of the move online in Africa, I think, got sped up by the pandemic.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, I think I said it.
Okay, definitely. I think that's a very good remark. And talking about company you are investing in, so how do you select them? So what are the criteria for you to invest into a company?
So we are a model first investor. That means that we're looking for the business model that we believe in, and then we're going to invest in it again and again and again. We stay very close to our core investment thesis, and we don't go out and say, okay, here's a totally new, different thing, let's go invest in it. So the first thing is you have to have the right model. If you're not the right model, if you're not very close to what we're doing, then okay, you may be a great company, but you're a great company for somebody else to invest in. Then we take a look at how you are implementing that model. For example, one model that we love is the various trucking on demand companies, the companies that are building virtual, basically they're aggregating small truckers and small trucking companies into a virtual trucking company that large buyers, large shippers can purchase trucking from. So we've invested in Truck It In Pakistan, which is full truckload. Truckistan in Pakistan, that is less than truckload. Kamyon in Turkey, full truckload, e-enabled freight forwarder. And we're about to do a deal in a similar type of company in Southern Africa. Right? This is a great model. We've seen that it works well in the United States. There's a company called Convoy. So it works in rich companies. You've never heard of Convoy, but who cares? They're a big company and doing well. In India, you may have heard of Black Buck, right? They own it. Yeah, you've heard of Black Buck. In China, there's Full Truck Alliance. The model seems to work. The model seems to be more or less oligopolistic. You end up usually with a small number of these large truck aggregators. You look at Uber, the rideshare model, it tends to be monopolistic. You go with whatever rideshare company is able to give you the lowest price and the highest density of drivers. And the drivers go for whoever pays them the most and the highest density of customers. The winner keeps winning, whoever has the best network. With trucking, commercial buyers usually want to have 2 or 3 suppliers. So it's oligopolistic instead of monopolistic. But if you are executing right, if you've got a high take rate, if you are not, we take a careful look. Are you subsidizing the price of a ride out of marketing funds? If so, your business may not be viable. Once you may be effectively running the business at a loss, paying people to use your service. So we take a hard look at that. Are you paying for growth, or are you literally subsidizing the the truck deliveries in order to get business, but that you're going to lose your business as soon as you stop doing that, so you're not able to operate except at a negative margin? We take a very hard look at that. What about the people? We've got some companies we invested in where, especially during the recent year, they've come very close to the edge of dying. And you see some of the founders who are just hard scrabble. They just keep working. They're chasing money, 100K there, 200K there. And they're going to find some way to keep the company alive. And then there are others who seem very lackadaisical. They kind of expect it's the investor's job to get them more money. We really look for the former, right? The people who are going to try very hard. We want people who understand the industry. We want people who understand the value that existing middlemen provide. If you don't understand the value of existing middlemen, you cannot replace them. I can think of a very large company. I'm not very large. Sorry, I can think of a company in, well, I won't say where, but I can think of one company that is trying to do a marketplace for various commodities, connecting buyers and sellers. And you say, okay, how are you going to replace the existing middlemen in this space? Well, we're going to have a website. Okay, what other value do these middlemen offer? These middlemen do not offer value. I'm sorry. If you don't offer value, you don't survive even offline. If you don't understand the value that the existing middleman offers, then you're going to fail because you're not going to be able to replicate it and do it better. On the other hand, we've invested in EasyFresh in Pakistan. EasyFresh is farm to store. Now, they are replacing people called the arties, who are basically a big man in a village who buys the local produce and sells it in the marketplace. They have that arty actually has a lot of very important functions that you'd better understand if you want to replace him. For example, he provides crop financing for farmers. You need money to buy seed. You need money to buy pesticide and fertilizer. He will finance you in return for you agreeing to sell to him when you harvest your crop. If you don't understand that and you don't have a plan to replace that, when you go to the village and you say, I want to buy some food, people say, well, I'm sorry, I already committed it to the arty 3 months ago. Can't sell it to you, right? You have to understand the value he adds. He's also the insurer of last resort. Your wife is sick. You need to put her in the hospital. You don't have money yourself. You go borrow some money from the arty. He's a lender, right? For personal needs like that. If your son needs to, you've got your son into college, he needs some money for school fees, you go to the arty. He's playing a lot of functions there. And you better think about how you replace that and how you fit in there if you are going to replace him. And by the way, the arties, they make a lot of money. They are not doing this cheap, right? The farmer ends up paying a lot of money in return for these services by paying more money for the inputs and getting less money for his outputs. The arties get rich, the farmers stay poor. There is room there to add a lot of value, but you better understand what value you have to add.
And let me ask you a quick question. So I noticed as well that you tend to be investing globally, right? I think you talked about Pakistan,
right,
Africa. So do you have territories or countries that you won't touch?
Well, obviously nowhere that's sanctioned by the US. In general, what we're looking for is bigger markets. So we are looking for, if it's a very, very small market, there's not much point in going there, right? Haiti, okay, it's an emerging market, but it's not big enough. Countries that are difficult to operate in have advantages and disadvantages. The political risk is much higher. At the same time, the competition is lower. and the margins are higher. So, for example, earlier this week, I talked with a company that was operating in Jordan, KSA, and Sudan. Now, you may know that Sudan is currently in the middle of a civil war. They had to shut down and get their guy out.
Mm.
But until then, Sudan was generating the highest margin of any of the regions they were operating in because there is no good alternative there. So we're pretty, I don't think that there's anywhere where we'd say, well, this country is just so horrible, we won't go there. We would look much harder though. And, if you want us to go and say, the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, okay, that's going to be really challenging. It might be better to be in a company that's operating out of one of the nearby countries, but also doing business in the DRC.
Mm. Mm.
Right? But we know people who are operating there, and you can make a lot of money there.
Mm.
But do you want to have a company that's incorporated there? Well, that's a whole different question.
Yeah. So clearly, I can see that the business model is really what is important, because if that business model is solid, it should be working in any country, in every
The
geo.
business model is solid, and the people are solid.
People, okay.
Right, the founders.
Yeah.
Right. They got to be people who aren't going to give up. This is a high-stress business. I mean, think about what it takes to start a company doing trucking in Pakistan or Nigeria, right? Or help, we were talking about the DRC and the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is not for the faint-hearted.
No, true. You need to show some resilience there. So
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And what about your investors? So how easy is it for you, because you're a syndicator, how easy is it for you to find them, or to bring them along, or even to convince them? So obviously you've
Well,
been yeah.
I would say that our particular investment thesis has a rather selective appeal. In other words, there are, for 99% of investors, this is something that they will not touch. You start talking about investing in Nigeria, and of course they say, yeah, right, no. But for those who are interested, right, we're one of the few people out there who can do this in a professional, competent manner. Now, what the hard part for us is to find the people who want these investments. But once we find them, once they vet us, once they talk to other people who are investing, once they talk to our investees, then it's pretty easy to convince them. It's not like we have to say, well, yeah, there's 100 other people doing this and we're the best. Whereas if I was investing in AI, well, there's 100 other, well, God, AI right now, probably everybody and his uncle is investing in AI.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think I'd like to move you to the last part of this wonderful conversation. And I want to talk about ESG, right? That's something,
right.
ESG investment is getting big and big. First of all, what is your take on ESG? Do you think that it's a real concern? It's a real, let's say, it's a real vehicle that should be developed, or that's more, as I say, greenwashing again? So what would you say on that?
Well, ESG isn't just green first. Let's be clear, right? ESG is also about making people's lives better, increasing people's income, etc. ESG can be real, and ESG can be greenwashing, as you mentioned, or ESG can be an excuse for poor performance. Yeah, I didn't get high returns for you, but, I brought a lot of people out of poverty. And, well, how do you measure that? And would they have been out of poverty anyway? I'm a big believer that any business that doesn't have big negative externalities and makes money has to be making people's lives better in some way. Otherwise, people wouldn't pay for it. Yes, Facebook's a bit of a joke. We all laugh. Oh, yeah, you're making the world better by giving people cat pictures. But you know what? Apparently, people want to spend hours looking at cat pictures. You're making people happier. Now, at a much more fundamental level, for what we do, when you make trucking cheaper, when you make trucking more efficient, it means that the truck driver, he gets more loads in a year. His income goes up. His family's income goes up. He spends more nights at home with his wife and fewer nights sleeping under his truck because he's got to find a load back to his home city tomorrow. You're making the price of food, the price of necessities that are bought by the poorest people on this planet cheaper. That is 100% ESG. But we do it because we're making an inefficient industry more efficient. It's also profitable. It's not, oh, we're going to do ESG so we don't have so much pressure on us to be profitable. We make profit, but in the industries that we're in, the only way to be profitable is to make them more efficient, and making them more efficient is ESG. It makes people's lives better.
So it means that basically whatever you do is already at the core of ESG. So for you, it's not a big issue to include that into your requirement because your requirement demands it actually.
We don't actually include it in our requirement, but it's an automatic byproduct. If you're making, we invest in warehousing. If you're making warehousing more efficient, you're bringing down the price of food, of clothing, right? Of all the other essentials that people buy. If you're doing that in a poor country, you're making people's dollar or, naira or whatever go further. How can that not be ESG? If you're making the supply chain from the farm to the store more efficient, you're increasing the income of farmers and you're bringing down the cost of fruit, of vegetables. You're reducing wastage of these products. You're ending up with more food available to the poorest people, and they're able to buy it at a cheaper cost. They actually get a more varied diet instead of having to live on rice and potatoes. How's that not ESG? That is 100% ESG. We don't have to ask for ESG. It comes from what we invest in.
Okay. And is it one of the benefits that your investors sees in you? And because I know there's a lot of
some of them.
Okay. Okay.
Some of them. But we don't try to sell ourselves on that basis. We tell people we're out to make money. ESG is a wonderful byproduct. One thing we see is that there are some people out there, they're asking, they say, we're going to go invest your money, but they don't want to be graded against other investors based on returns or purely on returns. They want to be graded based on ESG. And I feel that's a cop-out. It's a way of saying, basically, grade me on a curve.
Okay. That's absolutely okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for that. But I wanted to finish and ask you, I think we're coming towards the end of this conversation. I think I've learned a lot from your business model, whatever, to the way you grew up, Reflect Ventures. I think definitely I would recommend people just to look out for your companies, because I know you're always interested by good deals, good investors, isn't it? Right. So
yeah.
How can people actually get in touch with you? What is the best way to do it?
Email, LinkedIn, right? Invest@reflectventures.com. Look me up on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And if you've got a company, inquiries at reflectventures.com.
Okay. And that's the best way to get in touch with you anytime, right? That's what you would say.
Anytime. Yeah. I unfortunately work crazy hours.
Is it a price to pay to be rich?
It's a price to pay to try to be rich.
Oh, okay. You're just trying, you're not going for it.
Well, we'll see. But definitely, if you want to be rich, don't think there are shortcuts. You want to make money, you have to work hard. There is no magic formula, that the rich people know. Oh, you just have to do this one crazy trick and you'll get rich. I know a lot of people seem to think that. It isn't. If that little trick exists, nobody's told it to me. The only one I know is to work your butt off.
And usually what I ask to people is, because all of us, when we start a career, we tend to have a figure that we like to emulate, right? So you may know the person, you may not know, but usually that person or that figure will help you to drive and move forwards. Is there anybody that you admire out there and that sort of helps you to embark into this journey and to get to where you are right now?
Interesting question. I wouldn't say that there is anyone in particular who, I would think of and say I'm trying to emulate. There are certainly people who I'd love to, have dinner with or lunch with and have a conversation with because they're interesting, right? I think we'd all like to meet Elon Musk. I think he takes the place now of someone like Warren Buffett as the guy who could charge the most at auction for a lunch with him, right? You know that Warren Buffett, is it dinner or lunch? I forget, but Warren Buffett sells a meal at auction once a year for charity, right? I'm not too interested in that, but I'd love to do Elon Musk. But it's not because I'd really learned from him how to do Tesla or SpaceX or run Twitter. It's because he's one of the most interesting people out there.
I definitely would agree with you. And I'm sure many people will have the same answer. And very last question, because I know that you've been looking as well in one of your past experience to bring, I would say, Western education into China. So the education I could see is very much important for you. If you had an advice to give to young people that are looking perhaps to be as well investors down the line, or maybe have a career that look like yours? Yeah, Michael, I was just saying that I could see from your experience that you have been doing obviously a lot of job, and one of them, if I heard it correctly, was to bring Western education, not to bring, at least to support
right
some Chinese company to adopt some aspect of Western education. So I imagine they would assume that education is something very important to you, and I would
agree.
say so. If you were to talk to any young person at the moment today, and some of them, a lot of it can be disengaged, they have no hope, some of them. So what would you say to them? Yeah. So how would you encourage them, especially those who want to have a career that may look like yours and tomorrow be the investors of the future? So what would you say to them?
I would say it's a heck of a lot easier to sit in a desk chair like I am right now than to work on a construction site or to be a rider for a delivery driver for one of these companies, online companies now or anything like that. So study. Don't listen to people who tell you follow your muse, study what inspires you. Instead, think about what kind of realistic job you could be doing after you graduate, and then learn everything you can so that you're going to be in the best possible situation to do that job. It has to be something that you can be interested in and excited at, because otherwise you're not going to do it well. But it also has to be something that can be a real career and where you can make money.
Thanks for that. On that great note, Michael Friedman, I just wanted to say it was a pleasure to talk to you today to find out a lot more about your company, Reflex Ventures. I would say if people want to reach out to you, they can reach out on LinkedIn and definitely also on the email that you provided. And as for me, it was a pleasure to have this conversation with you, to learn a lot about the business model that you're supporting, that you're growing. And I'm very much hoping that we have the chance to meet in person at some point, and who knows, maybe collaborate. So thank you for that, Michael.
Thank you, Tony. I would agree. It's been a pleasure. It was interesting. Thank you
so much. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode of Renewables in Action. I hope you learned one or two things today. If you have, please do take action. Also, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast in Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any other platform that you like. You can reach out to me, Tony T, on LinkedIn to connect, to share your feedback. I look forward to speaking with you. Until then, may the sun be with you. See you next time on the Renewables in Action podcast.